In this video, I'm going to explain how the grid system and the columns work. So here I am on the Bootstrap website. I'm going to go to documentation and layout and grid and scroll down a bit. So here is the grid, but I'm going to get back to it later on. And here I have the lecture files open for this specific lecture. And I have this index.html file open here with live server. So columns go in a row and they should always add up, but not necessarily to 12. And 12 is the maximum and 100% of the row width. You specify the width of the column and the screen width for it like so. I would have a div with the class of call dash screen size, let's say SM for small. And I want it to take up 4 columns. Okay, so this will be 1/3 of row width. So why is this 1/3? Because 12 columns make up 100% of row width. So 4 is 1/3 of 12, hence it's 1/3 of the row width. You can also just use the call class without specifying the screen width, and then it's gonna take up available width respectively. So let's see that in action. If I have a container here and the row inside of that, and I have a div with the class of call here. So since I just have one div here with the class of call, this is gonna be 100% width. And I'm just gonna give this container a class of white and this div a class of red as well. So these are just these helpful CSS classes from style CSS. And I'm gonna leave this call. I'm just gonna have it as well inside of a container and a row, since columns should always be inside of rows. Okay, so let's see now. Here it is. So this is the 1/3 of the row width, and this other one takes up 100% width. So if I inspect this first one, if I hover over the row, its parent, I can see its full width, but if I hover over the div, column div, I can see it takes up 1/3 of the width, because it has this SM4. And this next one just has a class of call, and since it's the only one inside of the row, it's gonna take up 100%, regardless of screen size. So if in this row, in this container actually, I have another row, and you can have as many rows as you wish inside of a container, but the columns themselves inside of a row should always add up to maximum of 12. So if I have another row, and now if I have here 2 divs with the class of call, and change this one to green here, let's see what happens. Now they take up 50% each. Okay, so as I said, if you just have that call class, regardless of screen size, it's gonna take up the available width respectively. So I'm just gonna change this to 50 and 50 here. Okay, that's better. And I'm just gonna add to this row a class of empty, what was it? Let's see what they have here, 15. So margin top 15, just to separate it a bit like so. And to this row as well. Okay, so back to the grid in the documentation. If we leave out this extra small, which is basically the default and applies to all screen sizes unless you specify a bigger one, such as small or medium, and so on, then we have 4 sizes with 4 breakpoints. So small, medium, large, and extra large. So what do these breakpoints actually mean? They mean that to that specific screen size and up, the column will be as wide as specified from 1 to 12. So if you just say, for example, call SM for small here 4, and you don't specify a bigger one, such as medium or large, then that div is gonna be 4 columns wide on small screen sizes and up. But if you, for example, say call SM4 and you also apply to that same div, let's say call MD, as you can see here, MD6 for example, then it's gonna be 1/3 on small but 1/2 on medium. Okay, and if it's not clear, it's gonna become clear once you see it in practice, and you will see it is actually really easy. So let's say back here I want to have a container with the row here, and let's say in here I want to have 12 equal columns in a row which appear on small screens and up. So I would do div call sm1 and 1 here, and just duplicate this a few more times and change this to, actually this one is 3, this one is 2, 4, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So if I, and let me just actually give it a class of empty15 just to give it some margin. So let's see, now I have 4 equal columns here. So what if I want to have more than 12, such as 13 or 33? It's not possible, and it's never really necessary to have more than 12. 12 is more than enough for any scenario. So if I insist on having more than 12, I'm gonna actually just duplicate this row and have one more here, 13. So this is the 13th column, and just give this empty15 for margin top, and just format this a bit. So let's see what happens now. The 13th column falls down because the row can only take up 12 columns. It just breaks the layout. So once again, 12 is maximum. And even if you use a fluid container, 12 is still maximum. So let me just copy this whole thing down here and get rid of this row. And let's see, change this to container fluid. And let's see what happens. And still the 13th column falls down. So regardless of screen size, 12 columns is always 100% of the row width, and the row width is always the available screen width. That's it for this video, and we're gonna continue in the next one.